All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. So, today we're going to be talking about Venado Prime and how I think it is actually a good addition to the lineup of scythes that we have in the game instead of just another scythe. But before we can get into that, we have a sponsor you can check out at the link in the description below that I'm very excited to tell you about from Path of Exile 2. Path of Exile 2 is the next generation action RPG available on PC storefront, Steam, and Epic Game Store, as well as PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series consoles. Not only is PoE 2 releasing the massive third edict update for the game, which is adding Act 4, a ton of new endgame activities, a huge amount of new bosses, and a feature list that's honestly too long to list here, they're also going to be opening up early access completely free to play from August 29th to September 1st. Personally, I'm very excited to try out the big sorceress buffs that they're bringing in. They're going to be letting us mix the elements much more easily for big splashy spellcasting. Much love to Path of Exile 2 for sponsoring the video. Can't wait to get my hands on all the little buffs and big quality of life updates alongside the new content. Be sure to check out the game through the link in the description below to help support the channel. But with that, let's get back to your regularly scheduled Warframe content. With that out of the way, let's talk about the Venado Prime. Now, the Venado Prime's build that you're going to see here is not going to be something that you're going to be shocked to see. It is, of course, a melee influence build. That's not because melee influence is the keystone holding up pretty much almost all of the melee weapons that exist in the game, and of course we're going to use it because it's really strong. Though that is true, it is kind of primed, more so to use melee influence because of its unique trait. So, the Venato has on status effect, very important, inflict Tau status effect. This is great for a couple of different reasons. For those that don't know what the Tau status does, because it's only on Caliban basically, the Tau status, whenever you have 10 stacks of it, you get 100% additional status. For those that don't know what that means, it means for each stack you get 10% more, and whenever you're at that 10 stacks, you get the 100% more, which translates to taking your status from 32%, seen here, to 64%, which at its face doesn't seem that crazy. But the more crazy thing about it is that it is a new multiplier for status chance. That means that you have functionally, the way to think about it is instead of starting with 32%, whenever an enemy has 10 Tau status on them, you start at 64%, and then you take in your multipliers from Weeping Wounds and from Galvanized Elementalist on top of that. And that makes it considerably stronger than a lot of other sources of status chance. Of course, that's not going to mean it's like better than Weeping Wounds or something crazy like that, but it is competitive right alongside it and really good in combination with it. It puts us in a unique position where normally I find Condition Overload to be kind of a pain to use on weapons that are influence weapons, because you're trying to proc as much electricity as possible with huge weighting towards the electric side of your weapon. And that sometimes puts you in a position where you only have an electric status on an enemy, unless you're, of course, adding in primers from companions and such to make using this mod much easier, and then normally it is going to be better. On this weapon, because you're always going to be getting that Tau status, you're always, whenever you're inflicting a status, getting 2, which makes you immediately at competition with primed pressure point, and anything beyond that is just gravy. That makes it much, much better, and also gives you kind of a higher ceiling to go up to with your impact, slash, and puncture, even if that's all you've got whenever you are attacking an enemy. So I find Condition Overload to be kind of just an easy slot in here, whether you are doing some additional priming or using a Warframe that synergizes with this or anything like that. Just at blank value, base value, this is just, I think, the upgrade, which is good and is kind of a budget option, though budget option is going to be kind of weird for a reason we'll talk about in a moment. Other than that, Weeping Wounds and Blood Rush, we're building combo. We want huge crit stats. We want huge status. Primed Reach, we want to hit more enemies, more damage, more enemies, more the normal stuff. We are on Quickening, which I did want to mention for a moment here. This is plus 40% attack speed, plus 20% combo count chance. That 20% combo count chance, I've really started to value more than the additional 15% attack speed on Primed Fury. This weapon obviously likes even more attack speed, but shortening your ramp to get to just max kill power has really been very, very good, especially with these weapons that are on the higher end, because a lot of the time you're not fighting enemies who are strong enough to take multiple hits. So getting the additional combo chance whenever you are really mowing enemies down makes it so that you're going to be get built up a bit faster, be able to kill even harder, and whenever enemies aren't surviving multiple hits, the additional attack speed is less good, actually. So that extra combo count chance is not only cheaper with the 5 fewer points, but also just nice in general. We're on Galvanized Steel because 110% crit chance and then more crit damage than you're going to get from an Organ Shatter mod simply can't be competed with. This is the best. Galvanized Elementalist, any influence build, we're doing most of our damage through status. We want the 80% additional status damage as its own unique multiplier, plus the base status chance here is very good as an addition. Shocking Touch, the 90% electric elemental, we want the additional 30% modifier on all of our electric procs instead of the 60-60 because we don't need the status chance because we have plenty of sources of that to go around. But we would like our procs to just do more damage, and of course the additional base damage is not missed at all. Then we're on Discipline's Merit. This one is totally optional, and it will lower the investment of this quite a bit, of course, because you don't need the Exile slot and all that good business. But the Scythe heavy attacks are worth talking about. They are very, very good. They always inflict slash, and they have good modifiers, and they have good motions for hitting a large amount of enemies, and also for commonly getting some headshots on some normal enemies like Acolytes that it'll really help out on. Notably, for how guaranteed procs interact with Tau status. Tau status does not affect guaranteed procs. Guaranteed procs don't have like 100% status chance, and then Tau status is on them, and then that makes it 200%, and you get 2 of them. It just does inflict whatever the status is that's guaranteed. So Tau status does not interact with like the Hystrix or any of those sources of status you'd normally get. So it is worth noting that that's not going to be helping the heavy attacks, but those guaranteed big slash procs are, of course, always going to be good. I also did switch this to Reaping Spiral. Reaping Spiral, I think, is quite a bit better than Stalking Fan, and this does have the polarity for Stalking Fan by default. But, of course, it cheapens the build quite a bit to just stay with Stalking Fan. It's not that much worse than Reaping Spiral, though it is a moveset that I greatly prefer alongside just being better. With that, let's talk about why this weapon is actually relevant. Of course, for the Tau status, that means it's a unique thing. It's going to be able to inflict Tau status if that becomes important going forward, or is like a synergy point of any build going forward. This weapon's gonna be able to do it, and it's gonna be able to do it in a way that benefits it as much as it is synergizing with other things, which is immediately good. Also, it's kind of tight competition in the scythe space. We have a number of good scythes, and I think this one fits into a really sensible spot. Now, before we talk about this, note that this is MR14, and I'd actually be really curious to know if you do meet the mastery rank requirement for this, and if you do or don't, how long you've been playing the game, as I've been trying to get more data on, like, who's at what MR, as classically, we've, seen a lot of population in, like, the 10 to 12 range, so I don't know if this is above what most people can access. Obviously, this will be within this community and not anything wider than that. But MR14 in the Scythe category is pretty competitive with a number of other things. You have a lot of like lower end stuff that's been good, which is like the cost assist at MR7. But this weapon comparatively has just no crit stats whatsoever, basically, and is so much, much worse because of that. But like the Coda cost assist, which is 3 MR higher at MR17, which is a big jump from 14 to 17. If you look at like the total MR required, I think that the Coda cost assist is considerably better than what the Venado Prime is going to be outputting with its base corrosive that it has by default, giving it a nice boost alongside just the incredibly good stats and, of course, the modifier that you're getting because it is a Lich-type weapon. Alongside that, though, at the same MR is the Tenegrigori. Now, the Tenegrigori, I've talked about quite a bit in terms of it just being a very good weapon. And this weapon, if we look at the stat comparison, is kind of close. Now, noted the base damage of this is going to be boosted by the additional 60% I would have here, so it's actually quite a bit stronger, but that requires hunting multiple sisters, which I think is actually much more difficult than just getting the Venado Prime, which is 3 pieces that are honestly quite common, that I don't think would be hard for any given person to farm. And for that, you get considerably more crit stats, like very considerably more. 0.7 additional critical damage is a ton, and 10% critical chance, which is all quite nice. Alongside, of course, like better attack speed, better range, just a lot of good things going for the Venado whenever you do this comparison. And this is also an MR14 weapon, so an easier to get better with a additional like unique effect for the Tau status, I think is pretty favorable here. Other than that, the only other like comparison point is like maybe Hate. Obviously, Hate is MR8. Not really, because you probably want the Incarnate in order to really make a great argument for using this. But because you can get the Incarnate, and you probably could around MR14 or so, if you can go do that stuff or want to go do that stuff, it's maybe a thing you're doing if hate has also dropped for you from Stalker, which it won't for a long time for a lot of people as well. Other than that, there's not a lot. I mean, Reaper Prime is MR10, but it's vaulted, and it's like statistically I think quite a bit worse and doesn't have a unique effect on it. There's the heavy sides like the Thalus, but this is MR12, which is reasonably close, and also just, I mean, it is a different weapon type just in general. So at MR14, while this thing is unvaulted, it might be your best option for a scythe, especially to hold you over until you do get that Code of Cost assist, especially if you either, you know, don't have hate or don't have its Incarnate, or maybe waiting 2 months for that. In Lieutenant Grigori, if you just, like, you know, don't have a built railjack and are going to go farm those keys to get multiple copies of this to get the higher percentage, which this weapon's great, I think it's worth it. But this thing's just so simple. It's 3 prime parts with 1 rare, and you just have it. If you meet the requirements for this thing, it is just, like, very, very solid in terms of what it can output. Speaking of what it can output, obviously we are using Naramon in order to solve the just combo problem. Of course, you can use, like, Dexterity Arcanes up here to keep it going, but just, you know, you will need to put something on this to solve the combo issue. If we look at the actual build itself, if you just don't have anything else, just swap out Galvanized Elementalist for, like, Drifting Contact or something to give yourself a bit more combo duration if you have to. That'll also cheapen the build, which is good and makes it a more budget-friendly option. But at MR14, you probably aren't worrying about that too much. But in terms of what this weapon actually does, these are level 230, Steel Path, the usual suspects for the Corrupted here. And it's going to absolutely blow them away. Like, it is an incredibly powerful weapon. Like, you get the, like, free heavies that are always inflicting slash to, like, really just, like, do tons of damage. We're not even going to, like, get close to being a max combo here. We're at 8x. It just does massive amounts of damage. Now, the big thing I want to note about this weapon is a thing that some influence weapons don't do well. This weapon does very well, and that is because of the Tennokai and the uniquely good heavy attacks of Scythes. Whenever you do run into an Acolyte, the heavy attacks on this pretty much send them to the Shadow Realm with haste. They do not like it at all, and you can see, obviously, at max combo, this is, like, ridiculous and will clear, like, any number of enemies that are in a radius around you. Like, just very casually, just, like, chopping them all down. You can, of course, use, like, the different stuff on Reaping Spiral and do, like, the kick attack and all that for, like, the higher modifiers, or the standing attacks where it's, of course, higher modifiers. But it will shred through groups of enemies, and then whenever it comes to a large enemy, even if they are immune to status damage or take reduced status damage from, like, electricity, as long as they can be inflicted with statuses, you'll put a few statuses on them, and then that heavy attack is going to come in for, like, upwards of, like, you know, usually I've seen 1.5 to about 18 million damage, and that varies based on how many statuses are on the enemy for condition overload and whether or not you headshot them. But that's a very hefty amount of damage, as those are also damage values that are being done through usually full armor on an enemy, or armor with, like, some corrosive procs on them, which means that they're taking significantly reduced damage even still. So it's actually considerably more than the numbers that I've been seeing displayed on screen. It's really solid stuff. You know, is it the craziest thing in the world? No, I mean, it's a scythe, but it's, like, unique stuff matters, and I think that it's actually at the right MR for once for the amount of power that it's been outputting, which is not a common thing that we've been seeing with a lot of recent Prime Accesses that just feel like they have an insanely high MR requirement for no reason. Within this weapon category, it actually seems pretty on rate. And I also do really like the look of this weapon. It's kind of more, it's more axe than it is scythe, really. But yeah, I fuck with it. It's good stuff. Yeah, that's the Venado Prime. Hopefully it'll have some unique use whenever we go to Tau. Could see some, like, extra benefit for having Tau status while we're in Tau. Seems reasonable to me. So ends today's video. Thanks so much to all of the patrons for supporting not only this channel, but also the new Soulframe Scholar channel. It is much appreciated as that channel gets started. And thanks very much to our $10 patrons, Athean, Ith, Albert Drake, Alex Parnham, Arbiter Daydream, Babyhoot, Arcus, Nuven, Automatic, Brutus Salazar, Canalathra, Bob World, Colleen Smith, Dylan Dworsky, Azrain, James Hawthorne, GC4 Science, Josh, Lord Ian, Luzanth, Mike Easman, Mikkel, Michta, Nerve, Ruby, S267, Sanyu, Cezon, Sharp247, The Coupon of Death, Waifu Wars, Waldad01, Seraphir, and Zero Weebs Plan, and of course all of the $5 and $2 patrons as well. Your support is very much appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.